Thanks to our speakers and to Rita for moderating this session. Our next panel will be on technologies transforming the consumer journey. This will be moderated by Alexandra Tome, Head of Strategy, 8 Creative Technology.
Great preceding panel. Thanks, Rita, for setting it up. We're going to be talking about technologies transforming consumer behavior, and I'm very excited to have two of the most desirable brands right now in the region, Adidas and IKEA, and also one of the agencies that represent them, so we should have a very lively discussion. First up, we have Karim Özbekirci. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He's the Regional Senior Marketing Director of Adidas Group. Next, we'll have Osama Qasim, who's the Regional Marketing Communication Manager for IKEA. And finally, Omar Mahdi, who's the Head of Performance Media at Performix. Well done for avoiding the camera there. Okay, are we all aligned? Hello?
Yep.
Perfect. So it was good that we have our first question about e-commerce. We're going to start with basic technology in consumer trends, which I think is a nice follow-on from the previous panel. So Karim, e-commerce, is Adidas doing it? Yes, no, and how?
Yeah, Adidas is definitely quite active on the e-commerce front in some of the most major markets around the world. And here in GCC, we have an e-commerce presence.
Okay. And how long has that been running?
I think it's been running for a few years now, from what I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, Omar, you're driving traffic specifically to that portal?
Yep.
Okay.
We've been driving traffic to the portal since day one. It's been an interesting learning experience. We obviously can't share a lot of information about the data and stuff like that, but it's a brand that is really well known, well established. So there's a lot of demand for the brand, and as you've seen from the previous conversations in the previous panel, if the brand is really out there and really well known, and they do have the investment to put behind media to drive traffic and to drive ROI and obviously ultimately customer lifetime value, then it makes a lot of sense for those brands to actually build their own e-commerce platforms. For brands that don't or cannot really invest in a full platform, they have to ensure that if they're working with a partner, whether that partner is an amshi or a souk or so on, depending on the type of product in the industry that they're looking after, then they need to make sure that they have control over the full user journey. And that is definitely not the case with third parties. So that's where technology plays a key role. So recently Google introduced a solution for one of our clients in Brazil, where they were able to track all the activities for the specific brand without necessarily affecting any security or data privacy policies that retailer or e-commerce provider has. In the sense that if a shopper or a consumer is buying the specific brand, then what would happen is the tag or the tracking code would eliminate all the other items that are added to that same shopping cart. So this way, at least, the brand gets the information that they need about the consumer, and they would definitely have insights about how they can enhance their products and services from all this data. And the e-commerce provider would really conserve their privacy, and it wouldn't really affect anyone. So there has to be a lot of openness between all the parties involved, whether it's the retailers, the agencies, or any partners that are working closely with those brands, in order for brands to basically get the max out of it.
Okay, let me hop over to IKEA. What is your e-commerce presence, if any?
Yeah, we've been selling, I think, in the UAE for the past 5 years. The first question we were asking is that are people going to buy furniture online? Because this is one of the things that actually people want to touch and feel. Apparently they do. We learned that from the beginning. And just building up, even on the panel before, one of the highest conversions of IKEA around the world is actually in the UAE. which is very surprising because we were expecting that we're not going to be able to match with the more mature markets. But if you see that the performance is really, really high, even comparing to markets that have been selling for the past 20 years, like US and the UK as well. It was
Very
really
interesting.
good to see,
Okay.
yes.
So I had a personal experience actually shopping on IKEA in the last couple of days,
Yeah.
where I wouldn't call it a full e-commerce experience because the order was taken,
Yeah.
but then they told me someone would call,
Yeah.
and then I would actually have to give my card details over the phone.
Yeah.
Is this something that will remain, or are you looking to move to the full transaction online?
No, of course we are planning to. The real challenge when it comes to e-commerce, people think that it's always is online, but the truth is that the back end is what matters. The operations, the supply chain is what really takes needs most of the attention. And the bigger challenge that our warehouses were never kind of made in a way that people can actually get the products from them to their houses. So most of the shopping that happens today happens from the store to people, even though they order online. And with that, there is a lot of products that actually have a really high turnover. So we cannot really fulfill the product straight away. So there is a little bit of the problem with out of stock and stuff. So therefore, there is an extra layer of that is added. So it's not a problem of online. It's a problem of the back end.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next question, which is really for me the most interesting, is how everyone in the chain works together. So obviously IKEA is under Al-Futtaim, or operates under Al-Futtaim. Adidas is here by itself. And then you have the agencies.
Yep.
Who's responsible really for pushing the technology agenda? Is it, I'm going to field this to both of the brands first. And are your local partners, let's say Futtaim, do you find them a help or a hindrance? Are you pushing? Is there some antagonism? And then obviously for both of you, how do global trends filter down? Can you implement them in the market? Is this kind of the genesis of where new tech comes? So I'd like to talk a bit about how everyone plays together. So let's start with IKEA first.
Okay, so like you're saying, as a franchisee, it's a little bit. I would assume that it's a little bit different than Adidas as well. But to be really honest, everybody needs to be on board with this thing. The agencies, the franchisee, the franchisor. And this kind of innovations has to happen on every touch point. So you cannot really, most of the time, you can't really wait for the franchisor to do something. There are certain elements for big corporations that really take ages until they are done. So you have to kind of try to get them done as soon as possible. I mean, IKEA is well known for being an innovative company, but in the same time, sometimes things take a little bit of time, and you have to also operate on a more local level, on the market-to-market basis, especially that also the needs for furniture and even the shopping experience from one country to the other is also very different when it comes to home furnishing. It's not like an FMCG or electronics where people have the same behavior that they use their phones, for example, and stuff. Home furnishing is very unique and very different. So there is a lot of things that has to happen on every level. It happens on the franchisor level, it happens on the franchisee level, and of course you would also need mature agencies or local partners that they can do stuff like that. But with this age, you don't really need just local partners, because there's also companies that are around the world. You don't have to just rely on here. So there's certain elements that we go with. We use companies are in the US or whatever. Even so the world is open today,
Okay, so from, just as with my consumer hat on, I'm seeing a lot of Samsung being advertised with the VR and the headgear, and I'm exposed to certain sort of novel elements of this home furnishing, so I can see what my furniture might look like in situ. And so I would naturally expect perhaps that type of experience to happen, especially with IKEA. It's a well-known brand, and as you said, you have very high conversions here. What's stopping that from happening?
Actually, there's nothing stopping it from happening. The truth is, you see a lot of things, but also AR and VR is one of these things that are still literally in the infancy stage, so there's a lot of cost that is put into to kind of like make an exceptional experience. IKEA was one of the first companies that experimented with the augmented reality. There was in the catalog application in 2013. All what you had to do is download an application, place the catalog in your home, and then you can just picture how the product is gonna look like in the home. So this was one of the first things that we've done as a company. But the truth is also people are still not there yet in terms of the usage, because there's a lot of early adapters, but also a lot of technologies take a really long time until they reach the masses. And from that point of view, you always question the investment, if is it worth to be done now or not.
Yeah.
I think in the next 5 years we will see a lot of changes in terms of VR and AR and how they're used in retail in general. But today I think people are still kind of like not that exposed or used to it, like just the mobile devices when it started maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Takes time.
Okay, Karim, I'll hop over to you then. Perhaps you could give us your insight from an Adidas point of view.
Yeah, I think, well, as you might know, Adidas is here on its own as a brand and as an organization. And we are operating through our own stores. We have our e-com presence, we have our franchise partners, and we have our wholesale partners, both in digital space and physical space. So that makes a very busy marketplace to sell and communicate our products under. And that's why the main challenge is to create consistent storytelling across all these channels to ensure our brand integrity, our messaging is relevant to our consumer as we've designed and intended it. And based on that, I think what we really need to look at is how we are actually utilizing the technology in all of these channels in a seamless way, in a relevant way. And most of the emerging technologies that we see now are, as my colleague said, at the emergent stage. And we explore that at global level and look at whether that has relevance for our consumers at this stage. Can we actually replicate it across all these complex channels that we have? Can we make it seamless? Can we make it replicable? And can we make it cost-effective and easy to use for our people? And does it add value at the end of the day to the consumer in terms of our product offering? So these are the kind of challenges that I think many brands face today. But to your other question of how we are connecting and relaying this technology, a lot of these research is being done at global level, obviously being tested, being explored, and if there is a viable outcome, if there is if a particular project or a product is at a ripe level that we can actually take it on board, it'll probably get communicated from our global headquarters.
That's interesting, but I would counter that and say, here in Dubai, we're really breaking a lot of boundaries. We're first in a lot of things. The penetration of certain technology amongst consumer groups is high. Why can't we be the area where we start with something new rather than wait for the global level? And perhaps, on the back end of that question, I would ask, the government's very forward-thinking, so there are a lot of government ministries that are really blazing a trail, perhaps quicker than the private sector. And I think you mentioned something earlier about the Sports Council. Do you want to mention a bit more about what Adidas is doing with the Sports Council?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, we are seeing a lot of interest from the government of Dubai, where they're promoting an active and healthy, engaged lifestyle for the citizens and the residents of the city. And part of that initiative, we've been working with them on kind of cracking our heads on how we can bring a joint kind of program to promote this lifestyle. I think the first birth to that is the Run Base, which is a platform we've been trialing in Dubai Design District, where our emerging markets headquarters are, where we've actually partnered with Dubai Sports Council, inaugurated by them, where we've invited all the pro or casual runners, or just athletes in general who wants to be healthy, come together, get to learn about the gait analysis on their feet and find out the right shoe for those, get some nutrition tips and diet habits, the kind of warm-up exercises, and also a place where you gather up, get together and start doing group runs, and also do yoga classes, things like that. So one of our ambition is to bring perhaps a technology into this platform where we can, where possibly, you know, in the near future, our consumers can book their appointments through there, book their yoga classes through there, or arrange a group on social media and gather up on that RUN-based platform and start interacting and start running together.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Having walked around IKEA stores a lot in Abu Dhabi, I think there's definitely an opportunity to partner up there, maybe a
We should
run
put up a platform
base
there as
through
well.
the store, yeah. So Omar, I'll just finish that question with you then. In your capacity as the agency, are you suggesting new things? Are you waiting for the client to lead you? And then, you know, particularly with this council option, are you putting parts of the budget in there, or, you know, how does it all fit together?
Depends if we're leading the conversation or not on a specific matter. But obviously, as an agency and as a performance-driven agency, we have to make sure that we're implementing the latest technologies out there that can address specific moments throughout the consumer journey. So we wouldn't just go there and recommend augmented reality or virtual reality if it only taps on awareness. Yes, maybe it makes sense to drive a lot of awareness for a specific type of brand, but then the main concern is it going to live throughout the full consumer journey? Is it really going to drive engagement? Is it going to drive advocacy and improve the customer lifetime value in the long run or not? So we see a lot of advertisers jumping on the Snapchat board, let's say, for example, and there's like sponsored lenses. We want to be there. Well, if you don't really know why you want to be there, just because the millennials are there or you're a part of your target audience is there, you don't necessarily have to push for it, for example, unless it's highly relevant and it makes a lot of sense.
So would you say these are the most forward-thinking brands you have in your portfolio?
Most definitely. I mean, I guess there's a limited number of brands that are actually fully on board when it comes to e-commerce. But there's definitely others as well that are coming up with a lot of innovative solutions to compensate their lack of presence on e-commerce through a direct platform by partnering up with other e-commerce retailers that are available in the region. But then that's where the challenge basically reaches its highest level, because all parties have to speak together. All parties have to be very open to sharing data, sharing ideas, obviously within the right security and privacy parameters, let's say.
Okay. So obviously we've talked about, is it relevant? Is it going to scale out?
Yeah.
Let's talk about metrics now.
Yeah.
You know, for global brands like yourself, we would imagine that perhaps the need to look at ROI is not super important as it might be for competitors or smaller brands, right? So we look perhaps to you guys to lead and just experiment with things because you maybe have the budget or you are at the vanguard of some innovation there. But where would you say, what metrics do you look at when you're considering, shall we roll this out? So any sort of technology along the consumer journey is for awareness, engagement, and then how do you justify that? So are you looking at things like bigger basket size, bigger conversion rates? You know, can we have a conversation about what are the things that, and I'm sure they're quite different between furniture and maybe apparel. I'll field that to Kareem first.
I think, you know, there are so many technologies. If you're talking about, for instance, and it was brought up in the previous panel, things like the Amazon Echo, for instance, where you could order a product through Alexa, which is a cloud-based system that I use at home, which possesses opportunities and challenges. It creates massive data, right? Massive data on consumer behavior, consumer usage, consumers' interests and dislikes, etc. And it creates a trend of that as well, and history. It builds up a profile about you. And that generates a massive insight for what's relevant for that particular person. I think the first KPI of a brand, and I'm not saying Adidas because we are not actually looking at that yet, as a just holistically, a brand needs to understand that. What is these technologies? What are these technologies now completely personalized, are generating as big data? And how we are actually taking that massive raw data into an insight that we can utilize to become more relevant to consumer, which ultimately and inevitably will generate choice, conversion for your brand. That's how I would look at it. Setting KPIs on these, I think it's a very premature stage, but as you said, those KPIs would be the last mile of the KPIs where it comes down to the revenue side and comes down to the conversion side. But beforehand, one probably would look at what kind of productivity that we generate out of that consumer in terms of his engagement. And those are the KPIs that we need to define, which is, I think, you see some emerging trends like customer journey mapping, right? Big data interpretation. There are now roles being hired for data scientists, where this kind of emergence of parsing, reading this massive chunk of raw data, turning into an insight and defining the KPIs where one can say, okay, it's relevant, we should pursue, or no, it's not relevant, we should maybe look at another option. And then comes down to the ideation phase of how do you convert that into a concept where you can actually test and try, which is something probably in Adidas case and probably many global brands are done at the headquarters level, tested out, and comes to a certain comfortable stage where they can possibly pilot in some of the markets. But from my perspective, from a brand's perspective, there are no such plans in place so far.
I find it interesting that you talk about data. Again, just looking at the two different types of businesses that you run. So the type of data that would be kind of interesting in a furnishings business, kind of hard data, what are people living in smaller houses, bigger houses, how big are their families, all those type of data points where you have to kind of know them because there's a functional element to the product that you're buying. Whereas with Adidas products, I feel very much it's all about the brand. You've got, hardcore brand love there. So, maybe sure, the data could be important in terms of at the last mile, but when we're looking at things like in the Altavia panel, I don't know if any of the audience was in there, but they demonstrated the Adidas shop in Berlin, where you can scan your body and have a customized knitwear apparel will be printed out, and then you pick it up. So that's fun, and we all like it. Is it worth the investment? I don't know, but it's certainly something that gets me interested to go into the store, right? That's the kind of metrics that I'm looking at. So maybe you could measure footfall, let's say. So if you implement stuff in store, maybe it's easier to measure it that way. And then if it's not about putting people in store, what other things are there and how would you measure it? Like, you don't have, for example, just a pot of money you can throw at technology, like here's our innovation fund or something like this?
Possibly in the global headquarters.
Okay.
There is an area where these technologies are being tested and evaluated. And like you said, in some of the flagship stores where some of these things being piloted and probably a lot of insights being driven out of it, whether it's whether it's scalable, whether it's contextually relevant to the consumer there. Is consumer finding it useful to actually utilize this program that we landed, or is it just a nice kind of nice to have feature? So again, I think that's the beauty of the emerging technologies, right? 3D printed shoes in the stores, converting ocean plastics through and making shoes into it through our Parley programs. We are expanding into different areas. We're looking at how do we create more sustainable products? How do we create customization for our consumers? How do we create more innovation and quicker go-to-market with our products? So all of these, there's a lot of technology behind it, right? Some of those are centralized and deployed. Some of those things will be very consumer-centric in the stores where they're being tested out in few locations and then will be scaled out if there is
coach is an example of that as well. So as an Adidas product that is basically a connected product that is used with the core product, which is the shoe, for example, for footballers, where they can actually get advice on how their workout was or how their football training session went. I don't think that Adidas wants to be a tech company in that sense, but nevertheless, they are gathering all the insights that can help them invest more in different types of technologies that would enhance the product. So if there's a need.
On that note, Omar, I mean, I think Adidas, if you look at its vision statement, and its mission is to make athletes perform better each and every day.
Exactly.
And that comes with innovation, right? So how do you create shoes that cuts off a second from your sprint, or how do you create a a kind of tight that would make your, that adapts to your body movement, so makes you more flexible when you do certain moves. So there is a lot of technology and innovation behind
And
it.
that vision or mission came most definitely through a consumer insight,
Mm-hmm.
because millennials and even consumers across the world, they want to be better. They want to do
Absolutely.
better things.
So it's about improving.
It's about improving. It's
Okay.
definitely about improving, and that app or that system, like the Me Coach, for example, can help them start bundling it up with, let's say, a specific type of apparel that, and I'm just saying this, it's not something that they might be working on, but they might bundle it with like some type of socks or some type of shoes that can help you improve your sprint, because a split second matters in football, and those are things that consumers might be really interested in.
So then, do you think, are we going to see IKEA and the IoT, Internet of Things, team up anytime soon? And are they, do we want IKEA devices talking to each other, furniture, that sort of thing?
Furniture talking to each other. Let me think about it. I don't think so, but there is a lot of areas that we're experimenting into. If you're talking about experimenting in innovation, there is a new division in the company that is created just to understand people's sleep, and there's new products that being created just to help people sleep. So the understanding of the light, there's like things coming into the future where light, for example, will start to kind of dim by the time your sleeping time will come, because it will make it easier for you to sleep, and the brighter lights will make it harder. There's things like experiments about the warmth of your body and how effective it is with your sleep, for example. So in the night before you go to sleep, your shower will adjust the temperature in a way that once you take it, it will help you sleep better. Also, the lights will start lighting up in the morning, just the time for you to kind of like with the step-by-step for you, just to when you want to wake up in the morning, it will be ready for you and you will wake up much easier. So there are a lot of things that comes from innovation. I don't think furniture talking to you is one of them.
Okay, good point. Finishing? Any questions from anybody? We've just, sorry, had to wrap this up quite quickly. Yes, at the back there. We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Thank you for this. Thank you for the info that you shared. The usage of technology is obviously a very big driver for shaping the journey and ultimately the bottom line. I want to get your agreement or disagreement with the following statement, and this is to the panel. That with the existing technology that we have today that sits specifically with the agencies that represent your business, the lack of usage and the openness of data is not allowing that technology to be used to the fullest. And for some reason, and I come from a publisher side, for some reason, we are finding brands are still reluctant to share their data. Not necessarily with the publisher, but linking it at least with their media agencies. So
Let me just recap so we can all hear again. So you're saying with the existing technology, there's a lot of data that's locked up, not being shared, so people cannot benefit from it, including publishers and the entire marketplace and consumers. Okay. And that's directed towards everybody up here? Okay.
so the question is, why are brands shying away from doing that?
Very good point. Brands, would you like to answer the question?
I mean, I can attempt not having a full visibility to this, but if you look at from our brand perspective, I don't know if you can hear me, we do respect our consumers' privacy a lot. We do respect what information they share with us and how much of that information we acquire from them that we can actually share for any kind of purposes, be it advertising or product innovation or any type of relevant things that we could use or not. The thing is, it's also about how do we actually create a value for our consumer. So the information that we take from our consumer is being shared. It's being shared in ways where we take their consent, right? The information, for instance, when they visit our stands, where you would see, for instance, in a mall, and you see an Adidas execution as happening, an activation happening, and you'll see people with iPads where you sign up for getting more information out of it, where we collect customer base, but to engage them on our further activities, because we are now knowing that they're interested in our products or in that particular category of, like, say, football, and we look at how we can actually engage with them. Our goal is to make it very relevant for them. And of course, there are a lot of technologies where we can work on improving that relevance, and we're looking at all of those options at the moment.
I'm going to have to cut you off, I'm afraid, but
I was
please do feel free to continue the conversation. Don't let him leave until your question's answered. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you, ArabNet. I hope you've enjoyed the panel.
Thank you.